For the first probably year and a half, 100% of the folks that joined the Mobile Home Park Investing Academy were a direct result of the folks that were tuning into the show. The cool thing about that was it wasn't much of a sale. It was a pretty expensive program. It was a $5,000 program. But basically, the sale was them listening to numerous shows. They were already sold by the time they reached out about coming on board for the programs.
Hey there, this is Podjunction Podcast, the show where business leaders share how they use podcasting to grow, connect, and build their brands. Today, I'm talking to Kevin Bupp, founder and CEO of Sunrise Capital Investors, which is a real estate powerhouse with investments spanning mobile home parks, parking lots, apartments, and much more across the U.S. He's also the voice behind the Real Estate Investing for Cashflow Podcast, one of the top shows in its category. And he's the best-selling author of The Cashflow Investor, both of which are part of his mission to help make real estate investing more accessible. Welcome to the show, Kevin. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, thanks for having me set off. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Kevin, let's dive in. What's inspired you to start the Real Estate Investing for Cashflow podcast?
Yeah, no, great question. So, I was an early adopter of podcast. This is, spanning back to probably 2010 era, 2009, 2010 era. And so back when a lot of folks didn't even know what a podcast was. And what I found back then, I did a lot of driving for my work at the time, for my business, and spent a lot of time on the road. And so I wanted to occupy that time either with audiobooks or podcasts, right? Just trying to educate myself and learn more, right? And what I found this is way back then, is that there weren't many podcasts in the specific field of real estate that I was really seeking. And so, which is commercial real estate. There were, a couple handfuls of real estate investment podcasts, but I kind of ran through all the ones that were relevant to me. And I found myself in a situation where I was spending time listening to content that wasn't relevant to me. And so I thought that if I had that problem, that many others probably did as well, and so why not just go out and start the podcast? So that was really the catalyst of actually starting the show. Was that two things would come out of it. Number one, I'd actually get to talk to folks that had the relevant information that I wanted to learn. Folks that had maybe a lot more seniority in the occupation I was in, had maybe decades more experience, and that ultimately there were probably other folks just like me that wanted to listen to that right on the outside. And so there really wasn't much of a there wasn't much more than that. It wasn't necessarily built around a business originally. It was just, hey, how do I gain value and also give value at the same time? And if that's all that came out of it, I thought it was a huge win. If I could spend 1 hour every week with a very successful real estate investor in my field and ask them any question I wanted to ask them, that was a huge win. And on top of that, again, giving back value to the maybe hundreds or thousands of folks that might tune in. I didn't know who was going to listen. I didn't know if anyone was going to listen, but I thought it was worth a shot. And so that's really how it started. But ultimately, what I learned is that as I went through the motions with the show, the first year, I started getting a lot of inquiries of folks reaching out and asking about my business, asking if they could invest in deals that we were doing. And there wasn't a lot of resources out there on growing podcasts. There weren't, there wasn't a lot of information out there to really help me think through strategically how I should be leveraging the podcast, how I should be leveraging the audience, how I can be utilizing it to grow the business. I was just having fun with it originally. But again, I started identifying a common theme and pattern that, again, listeners were reaching out, really intrigued by what I was talking about, but more intrigued about my business. I would share just little tidbits of what was going on in my day-to-day business, deals we were working on, the struggles, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between. And a lot of folks started reaching out and asking if they could invest. And so that's when it really, the light bulb moment went off. And I really started strategically putting the wheels in motion to start trying to harness, that interest and actually help it grow our business. So, but again, I didn't really have that intention in mind originally when I launched it, but ultimately that's what it turned into. But it's never, the one thing that's never changed is that really we go on and we host the show with the intent of leading with value, giving back, things that folks that are tuning in, they're taking the time to listen, they can leverage in their business and utilize in their business and grow it.
Kevin, thanks so much for sharing that. I love what you've said, especially the part about learning from the people that you're having on your show, and also helping others that maybe were like you, who wanted to have some questions answered and to be able to get that from your show. I think that's fantastic. And also you talked about sharing everything on the show, the good, the bad, the ugly. And I think that would really help for those listening in to be able to resonate with you and your business and what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Yeah, Sadaf, and what I found is that, over the years, there's been many individuals that have reached out, thought about starting a podcast. You might have trepidation. One of the bigger concerns I've found, so long as they're not, afraid or don't have trepidation about being on the mic, being on camera. The other trepidation is that they feel is that, there's too much competition. Today it's very different than what it looked like 11 years ago when I launched my show. There definitely weren't as many podcasts. There wasn't as much competition. So that was a huge benefit for me. Today it looks a little different, right? There's lots of other shows out there that are probably speaking and sharing the same type of content, information. And what I have found over the years is that you could take 100 people that are actually sharing the same story, the same content, and, your voice is out of the other 99 individuals. Your voice is going to resonate with a particular audience set. They're going to listen to the other 99 and realize that they like hearing it come from you better than the other 99 individuals. So that's all you need. You need that tribe. Don't ever hesitate to start a show because you feel like there's already too many other shows that are similar to what you envision. Because I can promise you that there's, even if it's hundreds of thousands, millions, there's folks out there that actually want to hear it coming from you. They want to hear your personality. They want to hear your voice, and it's going to resonate with them. And they're not going to listen to the other 99 that have the same, maybe similar type of content.
Yeah, 100%. And you're right. It is about those maybe, 50 people that tune in and listen rather than the 50,000 downloads that you might, that it's comparing those two things.
That's right.
And you want those people that will resonate with what you're saying. Yeah.
I think the other important thing, it's about having fun. I think if you go into this and the only intention you have is to grow your business from it. Like it's a one frame of thought is that I'm only doing this podcast because I heard that it's going to be good for the business, and otherwise I wouldn't do it. I don't have an interest in necessarily talking about certain things and recording it or interviewing folks, but I'll do it because it's going to grow my business. I think that's the wrong way to approach it, because there's many times, it's a lot of work. Number one, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of energy that you're going to put into a lot of resources. It's not just a matter of getting on the mic and, maybe if you're excellent with your thoughts and you can get on and speak for 30 minutes about a subject, some subject matter, and not have to go and edit it, and, which is very few and far between. Right. So it's going to be a lot of work. And I think if you just go on with the one train of thought, then I'm just going to do it to grow the business, but I really don't enjoy it. I'm not excited about it. I think you might need to think otherwise about starting a podcast. I still have a lot of fun with doing it. I love meeting other individuals. I find that I get to ask authentic questions that I'm curious to know myself, the answers to myself. And so I feel like I gain value for every show that I do, every interview I have. In fact, my business partner today, we've worked together now for, I think, going on 9 years. We've grown a pretty significant size organization together. He's the other half of Sunrise Capital Investors. I literally met him through one of my shows. He was a listener of my show, and I met him through that podcast. And so, you never know who you're going to meet on the other end, and ultimately what type of value they're going to bring to your life and to your business. So.
Wow, that's very cool. You've got some great stories, Kevin. Yeah, one of the things you were saying about the longevity, I 100% agree with you, because I think it really does have to be fun. It can't just be for the sake of the business. It has to be something you really, really enjoy. And actually, the other thing I was thinking about what you're saying is that your podcast is actually quite niche. It started off in quite a niche area, didn't it?
It did. I mean, it's, I guess you could say, it's commercial real estate, it's niche, but it's also, maybe you could argue that it's also broad in nature. It encompasses a number of different types of investments and asset classes, but it is niche within the entire real estate empire, or real estate world. So, but I started a second podcast. I no longer it's still on iTunes platform and Spotify and all that. I ran it I launched it in 2016. And I think I did, new content for about 3 years. And it was very niche. It was called the Mobile Home Park Investing Podcast. Mobile home parks are one of the, specific niches within the commercial real estate world. And so incredibly nichey. And that's all we talked about were investing in mobile home parks. And I ran that for 3 years. And what I found is that, that one, it didn't get nearly as many downloads because it wasn't as broad in nature. It didn't get nearly as many downloads, but the folks that were listening in, they were 100% interested in what I was talking about, what we were sharing. Otherwise, they would go find another show to listen to. I mean, they were intently interested in what we were talking about as it relates to mobile home park investments. And so I personally feel if it's for a business sense, if it's truly, if you're starting a show specific for a business, I think the nichier you can become, the better. Because you're really going to have your real tribe on the other end listening in. Otherwise, the broader general nature audience, it's good, but it's really hard to base your success off of downloads. I do think when you're really nichey, the number of downloads you're getting, like those folks that are tuning in, I mean, they are really interested every day, probably what you're talking about and as it relates to your business, but also how it might impact their business, the things they can integrate into their business that they learn from the show. Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. Your other podcast, you said it ran for 3 years. Is that right?
Yeah. As far as like new content, I think we did about 130 episodes. And then it was too much, it was
to do
a
both?
lot of work. Yeah. To do both, both. And so it's still out there. It still continues to get downloads. We're still known for that show. When I go to industry conferences, I'm known. It was the very first podcast in that particular niche that came about. And so a lot of folks know us or me and your organization because of that show. If they were just getting into the industry, a lot of them would go listen to those shows and try to learn as much as they could about this particular niche. And so it still carries a lot of benefit of us just keeping those old episodes out there. A lot of the information is still relevant as it relates to maybe operationally and running mobile home parks and investing in mobile home park. It's still relevant information. So it continues to kind of chug along. That's the cool thing about podcasts. It's all evergreen. Whatever you put out there, it's gonna linger out there in the pod sphere for many, many decades, which is positive, which is a positive thing if you're putting out good content.
Yes. And I love how you're saying that it's still pointing people back to you.
Yep.
As they discover it.
Absolutely.
Kevin, you've also built some educational resources like the Mobile Home Academy and written that the best-selling book that I mentioned earlier. How does the podcast tie into that broader strategy of educating your investors?
Yeah, so that was one of the original reasons that we launched the Mobile Home Park Investing Podcast. It was really it was tied around the educational program that we no longer offer that type of training or educational platform. And so, the reason that we stopped doing shows on that, number one, was a lot of work. Number two, we stopped, offering the educational resources that were tied to that. But it was huge. I mean, literally at least for the first probably year and a half, 100% of the folks that joined the Mobile Home Park Investing Academy were a direct result of the folks that were tuning into the show. I mean, that was the sole lead source. We didn't do any paid advertising or marketing. It was only the podcast. And so the cool thing about that was it wasn't much of a sale when it came. It was a pretty expensive program. It was a $5,000 program, but basically the sale was them listening to, numerous shows. They knew what I was talking about. They knew I intimately knew the business well. I shared a lot of case studies of properties that we were buying, that we were investing in, that we were making, great money on. And so that was a sales pitch. I mean, it wasn't a sales pitch, but like for them, they were already sold by the time they reached out about, coming on board for the program, spending $5,000. I didn't have any sales guys. I didn't have to sell them anymore. Either they were a fit or they weren't. Either they were ready to pull the trigger or they weren't, which was a beautiful thing. So, so that was a huge benefit of having that show, of being able to lead folks, just have a lead funnel that led them to the educational program. Yeah.
So I remember earlier when you were talking about your show and how it started, you said that you weren't trying to be strategic. You were just trying to learn and help others like you learn. At what point did you realize, this actually is really helpful for my business and what I'm trying to achieve?
Yeah, within the first like 2 to 3 years, we really started to leverage it, and we put together an investment platform that allowed accredited investors, the folks that were tuning in that had a certain they met a certain criteria, they could invest with us. So they wanted to invest alongside us in our deals that they could, and so in that first 2 to 3 years is when we really started to leverage it. And I would say that over the first from like year 2 to year probably 7 or 8, we heavily leveraged it. The audience, for those that wanted to, again, invest alongside us. And I don't have the exact number, but, directly from our audience, we probably have raised somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 to $75 million directly from those that were tuning in. Because again, wow. I was in their ear for days, weeks, months, or sometimes years. And they got to understand me as an individual. A lot of times I was very transparent in the show. I'd talk about my family, share again, the good, the bad, the ugly, the business. And they got to know me intimately. And so when it came time for them to make a decision, if they wanted to invest with our company, there was already a trust built. And so a lot of that capital funneled in, again, without much of a sales pitch. It's like, hey, you know what we're doing. You've listened to me for many years. You know that we've been successful in this niche. And they're, ready to, hand over capital and say, I want to invest alongside you guys and do what you're doing. So, I'd say that, after year 1 is when we really started to leverage it. And really it was pretty simple. I wouldn't go on a long barrage with a sales pitch. I would simply, do a little plug, a lot of times in the first 5 minutes of the show. Sometimes it was just in the form of the introduction. I'd kind of, weave it in to the introduction about maybe an opportunity we have and how to reach out to us. Sometimes I would just record a little, 45-second audio bit, and I would slice it into the show as like an advertisement, our own advertisement. But that's really it. Outside of that, I didn't do a lot of heavy promotion. It was just a little bit just to, create, interest, and I let it roll from there. But it was incredibly successful.
Yeah, it sounds it. It's amazing, actually. And once, so with your strategy, did you have some kind of pipeline once they showed interest in some of the things you advertised on your podcast in the intro or throughout? Did you have something that they would then do once they got in touch? What did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't very elaborate in the beginning. Today, our funnel and our pipeline and our process looks much different than it did back then. But literally it took them to, I believe, just a pretty simple landing page with some additional information where they could put their contact information in. And then literally from that point, we had my business partner was the guy that was our investor relations person. He would basically pick up the phone and he would give them a call and have a conversation with them about next steps. But that was the funnel. Not much of a funnel, but that was it. Today it looks a little bit more elaborate than that because, today we don't only have, what I would classify as warm leads coming from from the show, some even hot leads, but, we also do a lot of paid Facebook advertising, advertising on Instagram, things like that. And so cold traffic that also comes in. So we have much more of an elaborate funnel that they have to work their way through when they come into our ecosystem.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I really liked what you said about people listening to you over time and then growing to trust you. It's that like trust factor, isn't it? And it really came through when you were telling your story.
Well, I think, it's funny because, verbatim, a lot of times I'd get, not myself, but Brian would get on the phone with maybe an investor, or if I ran into one of these investors at a conference or an association meeting, they'd be like, I feel like I know you. How's Joanna doing? How's Jackson doing? So they would mention intimate things that I probably shared on the show, but they're like, I literally feel like I know you. How was your vacation to so-and-so, last year? I've been there before. That was awesome. And, which is interesting. I don't know anything about them, but they know everything about me. And again, it just built that immediate trust, which, that's priceless.
Yeah, for sure. Kevin, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced when you first started out?
I think just consistency. In the beginning, I didn't do a lot of, probably for the first 1.5 to 2 years, I didn't do interviews. Interviews are a lot easier, not as much preparation for them. So in the first 1.5 and I don't know how long, roughly 1.5 I would just do free form content. And that was difficult. I would in order to put together what I felt was a very high quality, 30 to 40-minute show, it would take me hours and hours of preparation to do it correctly and to share what I felt was, good content, but like in a very concise manner, and not just ramble. And so that was, obviously that became, it was a major investment of time in the beginning for me. So I figured out better systems and better strategies and how to do things more efficiently. That was a big challenge. But I saw it as a long-term investment. I was planting seeds. And so I was okay with it. I saw it as as just a time investment, and it was going to, pay dividends, potentially many years down the road. I say the other one was, I didn't have much of a budget when I started my show. And so I learned how to do all the editing myself. I'm not I'm not, tech is very comfortable with me. However, I had never, edited a show before, audio clips, anything like that. And so, it got to a point where it was not burnt out, but like, it's a lot, I was booking my own shows. And so
it's time consuming.
Yeah. But, reaching out to folks, doing follow up. That's when I started doing interviews. I started reaching out to folks myself, doing follow up and all that. I was editing my own shows. And so I think I think there's a risk of burnout. Even if you're hiring folks to do all that other stuff, just doing the shows themselves, like, just, you have to know that it's a long-term game. You might get really lucky and get a pop in the beginning, but just know that it's a very long-term game. Don't get caught up in the downloads. I found myself doing that. I didn't even know what was, I didn't have expectations. I didn't know what was deemed to be a successful show based on the amount of downloads and what was not successful. But I would find myself looking at downloads on a daily basis, after I did a show. And then at some point I haven't logged in and looked at my downloads for probably a couple of years now, because I just don't feel like that is relevant. But I think burnout's a big risk, as far as challenges. Outside of that, I mean, we've had a few other technical glitches over the years as it relates to, and this is before Spotify really, became a major competitor for Apple. But we had a few glitches over the years with Apple. I think there's, there was big risk with that really being the sole platform that got 99.9% of podcast listeners. And we had some I think a couple of misspelled words in like our one misspelled word in our title. And we got flagged for it, like literally 5 years into this thing. And we were our two podcasts were number 1 and 3. If you typed in real estate investing, we were like way up in the charts. And they took both of our shows down. Both shows had a misspelled word in the title. And instead of shift, SHIFT, the F was missing. And so it had a bad word in there, and they wouldn't tell us what it was, or why they were flagging us. And I didn't know what to fix. And they took both shows down. They removed both shows from the platform for about a month. That was a big challenge for us. We lost our ranking, got them back up finally. And, but I think, it comes along with the territory, but, so we slid from like number 1 down to like number 28 or something like that, in the charts. So.
Wow. Do you batch record now to help as far as burnout goes? Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I do it one day a week, Tuesdays. I typically record anywhere from, light to maybe, I always have 2 to 3 scheduled, sometimes, one might only happen. Maybe they have to get rescheduled, but normally I do it all on Tuesdays, back to back to back. Yeah. And on a good Tuesday, I'll do 3 shows, most of the time. And then, unless someone reschedules, it might be 1 or 2, but Tuesdays I do it all. And then we do have a team now behind us. I don't do, I'm not involved in any of the editing or, creating shorts or, getting it put up on the various platforms. So that took many years before we really built the team behind it to help us keep consistent with. So now it's a lot easier. Now it's truly just me preparing for the shows. I only do interviews now. I don't do original content. I found that, I could prepare for an interview. I normally take about an hour, the hour before, and I do research on the guest, spend quite a bit of time really crafting, the questions I want to ask. Yeah. And so on any given Tuesday, I basically dedicate roughly, 6 to 7 hours on research and then, doing those 3 interviews.
Yeah. So does your team do pre-calls with the guest, or do you just go straight into it?
We don't. The only time that we'll do a pre-call is if I can't, whatever they've provided us, I really still can't get a firm understanding of who they are, what they do, what their background is. It's kind of muddy,
Vague,
And so then we'll request a pre-call, but typically no. And so I do think there's a lot of benefits to having a pre-call no matter what, because there's been times where I've done an interview and I haven't posted it because it just was a bad interview, or I felt that maybe the guest was even misleading with what their bio stated versus what they've really done, professionally. But that's few and far between. It doesn't happen often.
Kevin, if you were launching your podcast today, how would you do things differently?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a lot more resources today to really help you create strategy around it. I'd probably leverage AI, even as it relates to just strategy, doing research on the marketplace, like where there might be a void that I can fill with my show. How can I, help set myself apart from the thousands of other shows that might be out there with the similar content. But I think it all goes back to the fundamentals. I don't know if I do much differently. There might be some different tech and things like that I would use. I might consider hiring somebody, or one or two people on a team to help with some of the nuanced parts of it. Just help booking of shows, help with the editing, post production, all that kind of stuff. But aside from that, I think the basic fundamentals of just doing it for the right reason, I don't think that's changed. Be honest with yourself. Know that it's going to be a commitment, and know that you're doing it for the right reason. It's not solely just to benefit your business. Because I can promise you, if that's the case, then your listeners are going to know that. They're going to pick up on that because you're probably going to do a lot of self-promotion. It's not going to be authentic. And so just make sure that you're doing it for the right reason, that you got the right frame of mind, and then have fun, So, but outside of that, I don't know if I'd do much different.
No, that's great advice. I think you're absolutely right. You have to be able to be in it for the long game. And as you say, have fun. Yeah,
there's lots of shows. You go search, Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, and you'll find there's a lot of shows out there that maybe had 10 episodes, 15 episodes, 20 episodes, right? They hosted it for a year. And my guess is that a lot of those, and maybe life happens, right, sometimes, but a lot of those were probably folks that had unrealistic expectations. They were going to launch the show. They were going to get flooded with interest on whatever it was that they were promoting, whatever their business is. They watched the downloads, on a weekly, on a monthly basis. They watched their funnel, which no one was coming into right away. And ultimately they decided that it wasn't worth their time or energy to continue on the podcast. And I think that, again, setting unrealistic expectations at the front end and only having the sole purpose of doing a show is to benefit your business, I think that's the wrong approach. And I think a lot of those that burnt out or stopped after a short period of time probably fit in that bucket.
I think if you're wanting to grow it organically, you have to be in it for the long game, because it can take up to 3 years before you actually start seeing momentum come from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only other thing I would, maybe consider is, and I've seen this, we have not leveraged this strategy, but I've seen a lot of other shows where maybe, I guess there was a show that started right around the same time as mine in the real estate space. It's called the Best Ever Real Estate Investing Podcast. Joe Fairless, he's a good friend of mine, and he had great success in the beginning as well. I think he launched it within a few months after I launched mine back in 2014, and he no longer hosts the show. He used to do. It was the first ever daily show, so he would do 7 episodes, a daily show, literally 7 days a week. 365 days a year, which is crazy. But he would just do batch recordings, right? He would literally record, 7 shows a week or maybe 8 shows a week. But what he's done over the years is he's found co-hosts to come on. And now they've kind of broken up that it's still a daily show, but he's got, basically 7 other different individuals that he basically found and curated himself. A lot of others that weren't podcast hosts already, but he felt they had, subject matter knowledge on particular areas of the business that he felt would be valuable to the listener base. So slowly over time, he started bringing them in. So I would maybe, if I was looking to do a show and I felt like I was an expert in a particular subject matter, maybe even reach out to an existing podcast and see if maybe you can be a co-host on one of the days where they don't currently post shows. And maybe that'd be a way for you to get in and actually leverage someone else that's already got a platform built. They've already got a listener base out there. And then maybe that could be your launching pad, right? Or you might just find that that's better. It's better for you to be, doing your show there than, kind of starting from scratch. So
From scratch,
I'd probably
yeah.
I'd try to take that approach. And I think there's enough podcasts out there. And if you're really good at what you do in your particular niche, and you can, really sell an existing podcast that you are the number one authority in your particular subject matter, and that's going to how this is going to benefit their audience. I think that you have a good chance of actually taking that route. And so I think that's kind of hacking a little bit, right? Like podcast hacking to get your way into the podcast sphere.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea. It's like it's halfway point, isn't it? And you could even figure it out if you want to carry on or not, and then do your own from there. That's cool.
Yeah, you can still have your own brand. I mean, you can still, you got your own personality. Maybe you're underneath someone else's brand, but like you could still, leverage your name and again, your expertise and again, perfect way and perfect launching pad to get yourself out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Kevin, what's next for your podcast? Any new goals or directions you're exploring?
No, I mean, I don't know about new directions. We always try to take a look at it strategically on an annual basis and, look at the questions we're asking, look at the guests we're having on the show, trying to ensure that, we're staying relevant to our audience and that we're producing the best interviews possible. I think the only other big change we have coming is, and we've been talking about this for a couple of years, is my business partner, Brian Spear. He's actually, he's been wanting to launch his own podcast. Again, back to our conversation, to what we just talked about, like of getting on someone else's show.
Yeah.
I think that we've agreed that instead of him launching his own individual show, which, he's incredibly intelligent. I think he's got a lot of great things to share. I think he would find better leverage if he just literally did one of the days on my show. And so that's what we intend to do. That we'll be launching here in the next couple of months. So we're just kind of ramping up to that. And then at some point, maybe he'll have his own show that kind of spawns off of that, but ultimately he's going to be coming on. And so instead of us doing just right now, we do two episodes a week. We'll be doing 3 episodes a week here in the next couple of months. So excited about that.
Yeah, that's a really great idea. It's fantastic. Yeah. Kevin, if you had to sum up what podcasting has taught you about business or even about yourself, what would it be?
Yeah, that's a great question. About business, for me, it's helped me accelerate my knowledge within our industry, significantly. Again, I've been able to basically, folks go out there and try to find a mentor, or they have mentors throughout the years, and I would probably, maybe not every single person I've interviewed, maybe had a lot more expertise than but I would say that probably 10 to 15% of them were light years ahead of me, had been in the industry for decades and decades. And so, I think it's really helped me fast track, my success in the industry, because I've been able to ask the hard questions, the authentic questions, the ones I really have, right? Like of struggles that I was having in my business at that point in time. And so, that's priceless, and a lot of those relationships, I've been able to keep even after the show. And so, it just creates this connection, this personal connection with these folks that you're interviewing that, they kind of open the door up to, hey, Kevin, appreciate you having me on the show. If you have any other questions after the fact, like here's my email, here's my phone number, feel free to just reach out, we're happy to help you out. And, so that's huge. Again, that's just, you can't put a price tag on that one, the value of that network that it helps you build.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin, this has been such fun. Thank you so much for being so candid and for sharing your insights with us.
Yes, at all. Thanks for having me on the show. It's been a lot of fun as well.
Thank you. Before you go, though, if listeners want to learn more about you and your work, where should they go to do that?
Yeah, you can learn about our company, Sunrise Capital Investors. You can go over to investwithsunrise.com. Learn about who we are, what we do, how we do it. I've also got my own website where you can listen to my Real Estate Investing for Cashflow podcast. You can get a free copy of my book that Sadaf had mentioned, and that's kevinbupp.com. And then, lastly, I'm pretty active on social, very active on LinkedIn, active on Facebook and Instagram. And I like to say my last name is unique enough, Bupp, B-U-P-P. If you type in Kevin Bupp in LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, I'm pretty sure I'm the only one that pops up.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much. To those listening, all the links that Kevin has just mentioned can be found in the show description. And if you've been wondering how podcasting could support your own business growth, I really hope Kevin's story has inspired you to explore the spaces that others might be missing. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening. Please do reach out if you have any feedback about the show or would like to be a guest. I'd love to hear from you. I'll see you next time.